Well, hello. Hello there, David.
Hey Thomas, good to see you, man.
You too. You too. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join us today. This in our continued series, influencer series. And today we have an incredible guest with us for Workplace AI in our influencer series. So today we have David Bush. And David is a renowned business coach and marketing strategist known for his ability to create highly effective lead generation and sales systems that deliver a continuous stream of quality leads and extraordinary sales growth. He's also the president of BDR.ai, and as so, David leverages his decades of experience in sales, marketing, and business development. This to help entrepreneurs and top sales executives build scalable, sustainable businesses. So, welcome, David.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Thomas. I don't know if I could have written a better introduction myself, man. That sounded really authentic and from the heart. I appreciate it.
It really did, and I appreciate your taking the time.
You bet. Well, I'm excited to dive in today and to talk about some ideas and brainstorm, share some resources, and just help anyone who's watching live or watching a recording of this to level up their performance, productivity, and revenue, sales, profitability, all the things in between.
Right, and that's really what we want to focus on. So we really want to talk about how AI with respect to the sales process can be properly implemented and used to create that 3x return on revenue in as short a time and as low as a cost, all the things everybody wants as possible. But we also need to talk a little bit about how that takes some doing. That doesn't happen because you buy a piece of software that you may or may not even take the cellophane off. I kind of joke with that, but that you actually implement and use. And I think that's where you and your amazing solution comes in.
Yeah. Well, there's so many different tools and strategies coming at people. It's change is now at a pace that is far exceeded the human capacity to absorb it all, right? So, what we're hoping to do today is to share some applicable ideas. If you can just take one, two, or three of the things that we share with you today and apply it into your daily mode of operandi, you're going to end up seeing some outcomes that are pretty extraordinary. And you just have to be consistent. And, I think that the word of the day kind of is resilience because, there's a lot of things that we don't know. And it's kind of a struggle because we feel like that we need to know more. And what I have found is that if you just get comfortable in that state of discomfort and you don't have to know it all, just keep learning more. Because the more you learn, the more you become. And the more you become, the more you achieve. And the more you achieve, the more you earn. And then when that process becomes evident to you, you just become comfortable being uncomfortable in the learning stage. And so, at 52 years of age, I've had to learn a lot in the last 52 years. And as the adage goes, there's so much that I've learned that I don't know. And much of what I do think that I know isn't so. I'm having to unwind some of those concepts and limiting beliefs and doubts and fears and things of that nature. So, yeah, I'm excited to jump in.
Excellent, excellent. Well, you've hit upon a couple of important points, and I think the key one is that word change. But I always ask people, you're looking for better ways to do things, so you've at least somewhat acknowledged the fact that what you've been doing isn't getting the results that necessarily you're looking for, and therefore you realize in so thinking that you need to make some changes, right? And doing
Mm-hmm.
what you did yesterday isn't going to improve the results you get today. That is the very definition. I won't even say the word, it's such an old statement. That's right. We need to look at what we can do. And today, we're fortunate. We live in a world where technology is moving at a pace. We get up in the morning and the world has changed again. And AI is obviously a very big component thereof. But the question is, as you alluded to earlier, how do we use it? How are we going to get that to make the kinds of changes that we need? That's number one. And then number two, once we decide that and we start to put that in place, how do we ensure that our team has the opportunity to use that in an impactful way in order to get those results. Do we buy something and then hope that everybody uses it? Do we take on a service that helps us provide a lot of those kinds of things that really make it work for us? And I think therein lies a chasm of opportunity that most people fall into rather than make their way across. And I think your solution, in large part, starts to help with that trek across that chasm.
Yeah. And there's obviously lots of different solutions that people can pursue, but you know, right now the focus for us is business development. There's so many different resources that can enhance productivity, performance, and capacity, and all those fun things operationally. But the thing that we're the most focused on is in the area of business development, and that's why we titled this particular session, 3Xing, because we believe 100% that you can leverage AI and technology to 3X your performance and your outcomes. It's just a matter of how willing are you to change the way that you've been doing things, and how much are you open and curious to learning how that can happen and moving through the learning curve, which oftentimes comes in, right, frustration. And now I got to learn how to do this versus the way I was doing it before manually, or, just having our sales team work a specific way, or I was working a certain way and now I've got to do it this way. It's tough. It's a tough shift. But if you don't make that shift, you're going to get left behind. The competitors, your competition is going to figure out how to use technology and AI, and if you don't, it's just a matter of time before you become farther and farther behind.
Nice. Yeah, and I agree with you entirely. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of it. What does BDR.ai do, and how does that start to bridge the chasm? And how does that start to make and get results for organizations that want to properly implement AI in their sales process?
Yeah, kind of a big picture overview. There's lots of things that BDR.ai can do, but the big overview is just, business development representative powered by AI, technology, sequencing, and automation. So, being in the business world for the last 25 years and really, struggling through those repetitive sales related tasks as a salesperson 25 years ago, and then moving into business ownership and then coaching other sales professionals and business owners to scale their businesses, that's a major challenge because there's only one thing that people do predictably, and that's that they act unpredictable. And now with the new technologies and advancements in AI, you can get more predictable outcomes by leveraging it. So BDR.ai is simply just in the big picture side is it's going to help you to do more business development and eliminate those repetitive, monotonous, exhausting, energy draining type business development activities. So starting with, we call it the 3Ds. So we pretty much deliver three services. The first one is data. So leveraging technology to find your target audience and your ICP easier, faster, better, and less expensive than you're doing it by leveraging technology to do that, and helping our clients to really laser in. Most of our clients are still struggling with defining their target audience and ICP and really kind of dominating the puddle before they go swim in the ocean. A lot of them are going out there trying to compete in the red oceans that are just filled with competition, and they're not able to distinguish and separate themselves. So data, finding your target audience, using technology is a acceleration strategy, and we can help you to do it with a combination of high tech and high touch. We can guide you through that process. The second D is digital outreach. So we basically take what a traditional sales representative or business development representative or a business owner that's a solopreneur or small business is doing for business development, and we help them to automate it and use AI to complement the things that they're doing so that they don't have to do it. And what I want to make sure that everybody understands with that is it's not that you are using a robotic process to kind of replace you. You're taking what you would do, what Thomas Ross does as the VP of sales, and helping him to automate and delegate that activity so that somebody else is doing it on his behalf, doing it the same way that he would have done it, but doing it without him being involved. So just think about that concept about taking what you do in business development tasks, building connections on LinkedIn, starting conversations, inviting people to connect, adding value to your prospects to nurture and really awaken them to what your capabilities are and how you're different in the market, and nurturing that relationship so that the cold outreach turns into a warm prospect that already knows what you do and how you do it and how you're different than other people, so that when you do have that high touch conversation, you're able to have a better chance of conversion. And if you're spending more time having quality conversations with the right quality prospects, you're going to end up 3 to 10xing your opportunities. So digital outreach, LinkedIn, email sequencing, we utilize AI to take off some of those responsibilities and interaction, and just communication, staying in touch. Like I said, most salespeople are pretty inconsistent, or they act unpredictably when it comes to outreach, and so we can help that become structured, consistent, and committed to the outcomes that you're looking for. And then we organize it in such a way where it's very visual, so you know where to spend your time when you're ready to go to work on high leverage activities. And then the final piece is we actually have digital dialing that utilizes technology and AI to be able to provide an enormously beneficial environment, regardless of whether or not you're doing cold outreach, as a primary strategy, or if it's just something where you want to call, your top 100 prospects and you want to do it in less time. Utilizing technology to help you to do it will basically give you better access, better connections, right? So our technology will let people dial 100 to 150 dials an hour, and they'll have 10 to 12 conversations every hour. Think about that in the big picture of sales today. Most people aren't doing those types of things. So the data, the digital outreach, and then also the dialer is where we take the combination of high tech and high touch to get better outputs.
Wow. So with respect to that, and every organization is different, and sales reps tend to get involved in different ways at different percentages based upon the nature of their ICP and their customers. But that said, the process, or rather the process that you're speaking to, would cut a great deal of their time down in terms of cold reach out, whether that be email or calling or LinkedIn or all of those kinds of tools, and actually allow them just to be talking to warm customers and prospects that they can begin to use what we really hired them for, was their sales skills. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, people will say, well, um, I don't want to lose the human element of sales. Well, we're not talking about losing the human element. We're talking about taking the human element and adding it to a robust process and system that is something that you would already do. You're already doing these types of activities, but you're oftentimes running out of daylight because you only have 168 hours in a week. So if you're spending, 100 hours a month on business development, repetitive tasks of sending connection requests and finding your target audience and prioritizing who to follow up with, and then staying in touch and trying to think about what to add value and what step are you on. Even the most advanced CRMs are not able to provide that high tech, high touch combination. So now we're able to kind of create a place in the marketplace that's not just a tech stack, it's not just a tool, it's actually a service. It's a combination of technology and services and strategy. So I guess you could call it strategy and execution to combine all those things into one.
Wow. And I think we need to boil it down just a little bit more for those that still miss bits and pieces of what we've just said, David. And what I mean by that is, so at the end of the day, with respect to the human touch, instead of your sales team touching and talking to a couple of people a day on the basis of flat out cold outreach, they can now be talking to 10, 15 different people using their sales skills for what we hired them for, while your system in the background continues that process, continues the sales process with the follow-ups, with all those other elements that really make things work as we continue to work with opportunities in order to close them and get more customers. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep. And it's one of those things where, many people have tried to use technology and AI for business development, and then they have their own impression of whether or not it works or not. And there's really five things that you need to be very aware of to improve your business development, whether you choose to use technology or not. But these five things are the massive major critical indicators that dictate your success. So the first one is you got to have a good quality list. You can't say the right thing to the wrong person and expect good things to happen. So just on a grade of A, B, C, D, or F, how would you grade your list as of today? Do you have a qualified list of prospects that match your ICP that you know could benefit from your services and that have the needs that you can resolve or meet? That's step number one. And many people are not doing a good job of list building and being able to continue to refresh those lists with good quality information so their results are less than desirable. The second thing is that how do you show up online? On LinkedIn, how do you show up? Most people's profile, Thomas, it is a resume. And most people, when they are connecting with you, are going to take a look at what can you do for me? They're tuned into WIIFM. And if you don't have something of value in a matter of seconds that they could see as a reason to connect with you, you will not likely connect with that person. And that's where most business to business opportunities are happening on LinkedIn. That's the new, strategy for networking. So if you're not doing a good job with your profile, and there's a whole bunch of things that we help our clients to improve their profile so that they become a very attractive connection where people go, I want to connect with you. And if you go to LinkedIn right now and you type in Thomas Ross, you will see Thomas's profile and what he does is being very valuable to connect with him because he's understood the value of having good quality information. You don't have to be a content creator. You don't have to be an influencer. I mean, Thomas does some amazing work in providing education and value in the area of AI. You don't have to be Thomas, but you need to be the best version of you on LinkedIn when you're reaching out to a targeted audience of prospects. You don't want your resume to be the primary focus of your LinkedIn. You want to be able to be client facing to show your prospective clients what it is that you can do to solve their problems and how you're different than others and give them some attraction to why they should connect with you. So that having your profile be optimized is the second piece. The third piece is the messaging sequence. Most people do not have a good strategy for messaging. You can't go out there and make a bunch of withdrawals before you make deposits. So what our technology does is it helps people to make deposits into the accounts of these connections that they're building so that when they make a withdrawal, they make an ask, they invite them to spend time with them, they're more compelled to do it because they see value that has been received without any ask. So most people's messaging, the sequencing is out of order. And if you have an unlimited TAM or total addressable market, I guess you could spam your TAM. You could do that and you could get certain results. But because of the LinkedIn limits of 100 to 200 connection requests, because of a limited target market that most people have, you've got to combine quality with quantity. And this is a social networking platform. It's not a, sales platform. Not everybody that you're going to connect with is going to need your services. So making sure that you have good messaging sequence and building relationships before you start to sell and tell is a critical success factor. The next one is your offer. You got to have an irresistible offer. You got to have something that people say, I want that. I need that. I got to have that. And so if you don't have a good irresistible offer, we work with you on that messaging and that copywriting to help you to become more compelling to connect with. And then the last piece is the follow-up. And many people know this, Thomas, but they don't do it, right? They don't follow up. And if you're going to go out there and do business to business sales, you have to follow up a minimum of 6 to 12 times. And you have to use omni-channel communication. You can't continue to reach out to people on LinkedIn as your only primary source of focus. You got to combine interactions on LinkedIn. So liking posts, comments, things of that nature, and that can all be automated with our service and AI. You can also go in there and endorse skills, being interactive. Some things are automated, some things are optional you can do on a personal level. And then you want to make sure that you're using email communication, which we integrate email integration into our sequences. And then you want to be able to put in some personal touches, some personal follow-ups, some voicemails, some personal calls, text messages, if that's appropriate for your industry. But those follow-up processes and that nurturing process is where the real win happens, right? The fortune is in the follow-up. So if you could use automation and technology and AI to be able to improve those five things, what would be the outcome? Would you 3x your productivity and profitability? I would say that that would be a minimum expectation if you improved all five.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. Let's get into the numbers because this is where it
Absolutely.
from my perspective. And you and I haven't had this specific conversation, so we can have a little bit of fun with this. So I've got 10 sales reps. Now, on average, how many within that group of 10 sales reps meet some? I'm going to say some because I know none of them are going to meet all five, but how many of those are meeting those five criteria?
Well, I would say that most of them are not. I mean, usually we have a 90-10 rule, right? 90% aren't, 10% are, and the 10% are carrying the other 90%. So I'd say, that the top 10%, if you could get 2 to 3x on their activities because you're able to eliminate some of the repetitive tasks that are low leverage activities, that are low payoff activities, that they have to do them. They pay off in the end, and again, that's when, adding to your seat count, right? You have these 10 sales reps and you're not hitting your numbers. And so what do? Add more people, right? You add more people to a problem. And that strategy is becoming very hard for people to end up seeing success with, because it's not always just increasing your seat count. It's actually increasing your productivity and profitability and performance of each individual sales rep. So let's just do the numbers, Thomas. This is something that we have very consistent history, and we can show case studies around this. But if in every 90 days, if you just said that you had 2,000 prospects that matched your ICP, every quarter, if you reached out to 2,000 connection requests or sent 2,000 connection requests every quarter to that targeted list of prospects, which would be the maximum that LinkedIn would likely allow you to do, because their LinkedIn limits are 100 to 200 connection requests. So if you have a good SSI score, you could send out, approximately 2,000 connection requests, maybe a little more, in a 90-day period of time. How many of those people would connect with you? My experience says about 20%. If you have a good quality profile, you may get more if you're, reaching out to people that are second degree connections or in the same city or something of that nature. But let's just say 20%. So 20% of 2,000 is 400 new connections. And out of those 400 new connections, how many of those people do you think would engage in a conversation with you? I'd say 20%. So if you had 80 replies and conversations that were started, how many of those conversations could you move over a 90-day period of time to a qualified meeting? Most people can't do that on their own. They can't do it manually, but our system can do it with an extreme level of accuracy and an extreme level of predictability. Why? Because we program it to do what it's supposed to do, and it does it on your behalf without you having to be involved in doing it every day. All you have to do as a sales professional is log into the platform and follow up with the people that are engaging and move them through the sales funnel process, which is what you're paid to do. But you don't have to do the finding of contacts, sending of connections, sending emails, sending messages. You organize all of that to be personalized to the target audience and person at scale. And we have been doing that for 7 years and seeing tremendous results. The challenge is making sure that the sales professional or business owner who's using the platform integrates the high touch. Because if you depend on high tech for everything, you'll get some, But when you personally get involved, like, you can catch certain fish by sending out, a hook with no
Good
bait on
job
it.
of
You could get some fish to bite, but if you put some good bait on the hook, and if you had a net and you actually got involved in the process and you learned to reel in, a certain process would probably give you better outcomes in being a good angler. And so, being a good fisher of clients kind of has that same interaction.
there's a gap between what you've said, which is excellent and right on the money, versus the understanding of the nature of how to implement, buy, use AI. And that's what I want to speak to because I think this works and is very important for our audience to understand. Buying the newest, greatest, most wonderful AI tool that you've seen versus um, leveraging a system that's putting AI in place on your behalf and with you are two very different things. So when I buy the latest greatest AI, maybe it's a sales agent, maybe it's a tool that connects LinkedIn to my CRM, maybe it's a number of these different tools, and there's many of them out there now, right? The problem is I'm now counting on my team to be onboarded, to use it properly, to do all the things that you've spoken to. And I'm right back where I was a month ago, right? With the 80-90% rule. And one of them out of 10 used the darn thing and the other nine didn't. So I haven't gained
Right.
anything. Whereas, and where I really want to highlight the difference. So if I'm paying 20 bucks a month for some piece of software that nobody's going to use versus utilizing a service that's going to implement that on behalf of my team. And now I'm going to see who on my team actually shows up in the morning, cup of coffee or
Right.
not, versus those who don't. And those who don't, well, that sentence finishes itself. But with and for those who do, now I can feed them and I can keep them busy and I can put those sales skills that we've likely trained them with to work and get results. And by comparison, now you said something earlier, and this is what I want to focus on because it's always A versus B. Do I go and hire two more sales reps and I've still only got one doing the job, but now I've got 10 or 11 not doing the
Mhm.
job? Or do I put a service in place and now maybe I've got 5 or 6 people pumping, talking to customers and moving the needle and getting the results that we talked about. And that means that I'm not paying 20 bucks a month for a seat that isn't going to get used anyway. I'm paying for a service that's filling in. So rather than hiring that sales rep at 65 grand a year and everything else that goes with it, I'm putting a service in for a fraction of that cost, right? But more than 20 bucks a seat, right? By way of some software nobody's going to use. And I'm
Right.
implementing a system that's going to get me results from the get-go. Is that a fair illustration? And can you please fill in the
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately, as Stephen Covey, the great author, said, accountability breeds responsibility. And so, you have to have some accountability factors. And so, our platform provides individual and team level results. How many connection requests were sent? How many were accepted? How many messages were sent out? How many replies were received? And so you can do performance reviews on digital outreach inside of our platform. So, as a VP of sales, Thomas, right now, I don't know if you have the answer to this question. You don't have to answer it. But if I asked you the question and said, do you know how many connections or connection requests that the sales staff sent out to targeted prospects that match your ICP? And how many of those people accepted their connection request? And how many people replied to their messages? You're at a point where you just most likely, unless you're using some form of technology to measure those business development activities, right now you're having to trust the individual sales professional. And
well, I can at least answer positively in that we're going to be using BDR.ai, so I will have the answer. Currently, I have a tertiary answer, so I can see a little bit of that, but I certainly can't get into the weeds and determine who's who in the zoo and ensure the results coming out the other end of the funnel. And that's why we're going to employ your solution.
right, and I appreciate you to making that comment. I appreciate the opportunity to partner. But the other thing is that we have companies, large companies that have 25 licenses, and the reason why it is because um, they want to be able to control what is said in interactions. So, you go out there and you put a new sales rep or you put a sales rep out there and say, here's the conversations, here's the information, and everybody does what's right in their own mind. You don't have a predictable and scalable system. What you have is a system that's based upon an individual and their motivation, their mindset, their skill set, and their level of actions. But if you had a duplicatable, scalable system where you could go out there and you could put together a 90-day business development sequence that was something that could be personalized to the individual. They have some flexibility to customize the messaging, but you put in the messaging, the give, ask, the deposit withdrawal model, and you give them that framework, that structure, but you give them the flexibility to make it their own. So it's like a sales script. We oftentimes give our sales reps sales scripts to make outbound sales calls, but we don't give them the good structures of scripting on LinkedIn or using email outreach and how to be able to create that model. So, what if you had a system that was duplicatable and scalable? You could actually have it all laid out, and then the individual sales rep, all they had to do was follow up with the people that connected with them and follow up with the people that replied with them. And if you could actually put in saved templated replies that all they had to do is just point and click, and or you hired a internal BDR to manage it for all 10 sales reps, imagine the productivity increase. I mean, if you could have 10 sales reps sending out 2,000 connection requests every quarter to the quality prospects that you've defined as your list and your target audience, and they got a 20% acceptance rate, and they got a 20% reply rate, and they got a 20% meeting booked rate, what would be the outcome of doing that? And that's not asking your sales reps to learn AI. It's just plugging them into a system and then making sure that you're verifying and holding them accountable to the steps that are required. Again, we can do the technology, but we can't manage sales teams, right? That's the responsibility of somebody in an organization to manage that process. And if you're a small organization, it's not very hard. You're self-managed. You can do it on your own. If you want us to help you to manage it, that's another service that we offer. We actually offer VA services so that we're able to manage and give you a report every week. Here's what the results are. Here's the people that are the hot leads that need the responses. And if you've ever done any type of high volume prospecting on LinkedIn, you know that it can be a nightmare trying to manage it all. So we do all that. So pulling it all together, making it happen for people is really exciting. And seeing sales reps and seeing business owners get a smile back, because a lot of sales reps are just burned out on the repetitive, low leverage tasks that have to be done, 20, 30% of their day. Now, if they spent more time with qualified prospects, having conversations with them, maybe they'd close more, maybe they'd smile more and enjoy their opportunities.
Wow. And that is so powerful. People having fun and enjoying what they're doing versus all the drudgery that they no longer have to do in the same way. But they still have to understand what they're doing. And it's really important, and I get asked this daily. Is AI going to replace my sales team? And the answer to that is absolutely not. But what it is going to do is get your sales team at the knife's edge. And what I mean by that, it's going to sharpen them. They now get to use their sales skills every day consistently. And as such, you're going to get the best results because that's what you pay them for. And that's what they really bring to bear, as opposed to developing lists, doing outreaches of one kind or another, staying on top of follow-ups that are coming at them because now they're being implemented. It's right in front of them. All they need to do is to create that. In addition, they're now learning skills that they didn't have and were not necessarily as inclined to use, that they'll now need to add by way of their LinkedIn profile, by way of their presence, by way of the messaging that they may or may not have been that great at. AI plays an enormous role in all of that, but you still got to give AI the information that it needs in the first place, or who knows what it's going to come out with, right? So it's really important to do that. But I think at the end of the day, by comparison, from a cost perspective basis. And again, that's the way we all look at this. What's the ROI? So your ROI on buying 2 more reps is 120 grand. Your ROI in putting a system like this and weeding down the 10 reps to the 5 or 6 that actually deserve the seat they're sitting in, right? And getting the 3, 4, 5 times results from them. Are you kidding me? I don't even know what that number is, but it seems to me that it's a pretty simple answer.
Yeah. Well, I love what you were saying about AI. I shared a video the other day with you, and I'll have Nathan put it in the chat for those people that are interested. But
Sure.
he made this comment at this conference. Jensen Huang, from CEO of NVIDIA, he's worth like $106 billion and has a few good insights on AI and the future of where it's going to play in our world. But he said three things in this video. It's only 29 seconds long. He said, if you're not engaging AI actively and aggressively, you're doing it wrong. If you're not engaging AI actively and aggressively, you're doing it wrong. That's principle number one. Principle number two is you're not going to lose your job to AI, as you just said, Thomas. You're going to lose your job to somebody who uses AI. So AI is not going to replace you. It's going to compete with you for those people that are using it and leveraging it at a high level. And then your company is not going to go out of business because of AI. Your company is going to go out of business because another company figured out how to use AI to do things faster, better, easier, and at less cost than you did. So the message is clear. AI is not a buzzword. It's actually a serious economic strategy. And if you're not moving fast, you risk falling behind. And that's not what we want our teams to be doing. And that's hard to accept. That's hard, it forces us to accept the reality that our future is going to be different than what we imagine. So we want to focus on moving people forward into that next level of technology, AI, automation, and sequencing.
Right. And I think that's the critical bit, right? We want to be able to fill in those gaps and help people really move along. But that message is so important. If you're not using AI, as you say, you're going to lose to somebody who is. And that's really the critical thing. But add to that, and this is what's so important. I speak to CEOs every single day. And one of the things that I hear very often is we already have AI. We're using AI. We bought this, we bought that. And then my question is, who's using it? Where is it being used? And what's your result? What's your ROI? And to any and all of those questions, I get the same look, which is the deer in the headlights, right? They don't know the answer to that. They just know they're using it. Well, that doesn't actually count. And that's an awful answer. And sorry, maybe it does in the next board of directors meeting. You can tell all the folks in the board of directors that you're using AI, but the reality is you're not, right? You're still in play mode. You need to get out of play mode and get into work mode. You need to get out of let's see what this does to let's get results. Those are two very different mindsets. And the opportunity to put that in play is here and it's in front of you. Are you ready? Or are you still going to go back to the sandbox and play some more? Because one is a waste of time and the other is going to make a difference the next quarter. So this is the conversation we need to be having and help people with. They need to move through it, get the results, and get going with it. And the great opportunity with BDR.ai, which is the reason that we're going to be using it with you and your team, David, is because it takes a lot of that out and we can jump right in and get using and get the advantages without that huge learning curve and without the
Mm-hmm.
playtime, right? We can just get down to it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where the opportunity is. As I say, I think there's a great chasm between buying it, using it, and getting the opportunity. And most of the sheep are falling in the chasm. Which one of us
Mm-hmm.
figured out where that bridge is so that we can actually get the results that we're
Absolutely.
looking for. So I really
We're on to
appreciate.
something. We're on to something big, and excited to be able to partner with you and other organizations and individuals that are ready to, kind of take that next step. Because I think that, using the analogy of climbing a mountain, most people have climbed into what I call a comfort cave. They're reaching a certain level of success, and they say, we know what we know and it works just so. And then there's the people that are getting out of that comfort cave and they're innovating, they're trying new technologies and integrating AI into their practices, and they're failing forward. They're climbing to the peak, the next peak, which is the summit of success. That if you don't get out there and start climbing, the comfort cave can be comfortable for a while, and then it becomes very dark and damp, and it's not going to be something where you're going to like being in there. So, moving out of the comfort zone into the learning zone is step one. And we partner with people that want to go into that learning zone together with somebody else that's been up the mountain. You use Mount Everest as an example. There's experienced guides and Sherpas that help you to the top of the mountain. And if you want to take the next peak or you want to reach the summit, you most likely want to go with somebody that's been doing it for 7 years or has
Right.
experience in taking other people to the top. And if they have, a lot of casualties, you might be a little concerned. And that's one of the things that you talked about earlier is there's a lot of tech stacks out there that people that do, or technologies that do some of the things we're talking about today, but they're oftentimes not a guided experience. It's just a technology. It's like giving people crampons and a backpack and saying climb Mount Everest, and then what happens is that somebody slips and falls and didn't tie into ropes and didn't put on the crampons on their feet to hold them in the ice. So what happens is that they slide down the mountain and they go, nobody can climb that mountain. That doesn't work. When other people are doing it successfully because they have the right tools, the right guide, the right support, they're using the right conditions, right? All those things have to line up to be successful. So, yeah, I'd love to share more on the details of what it is that we do, if that's something that you think would serve the crew. And yeah.
Well, that said, how do people reach you, David? So how do they learn more about the solution? How do they reach you? And how do they start getting results?
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just go to the BDR.ai website and contact us. As soon as you contact us, we'll give you some more information, schedule a demo with you. There's lots of little video tutorials. There's a free, we have an AI business prospecting guide that you can download at no cost. So lots of free resources, lots of training videos, and kind of what you would like to kind of do on first look. But we would love to have a conversation with you and have a quick demo, learn about your target audience, learn about your unique value proposition, and then be able to show you how we can end up scaling your outreach and business development using some of the tools that we have access to.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I really appreciate that. And of course, they can get you on LinkedIn. I'll bet you're there.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. We'd love to be able to connect up and follow our LinkedIn page. We love being able to share, tactics and tools and ideas and, resources from experts, like Thomas and Workplace AI. And yeah, what a great resource that you guys are doing. It's fun to be able to come together with other innovators like yourself to be able to share these insights and collaborate and, bring people into the next generation of high tech and high touch.
Well, David, thank you so much for your time. What an amazing conversation. Obviously, this is something right in my bailiwick, so we had a lot of fun with respect to that. So again, thank you so much. And I look forward to learning more about your solution as we begin to use it. And if that's not a testimonial for everybody here, I don't know what is. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And again, David, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me, Thomas.
Bye-bye now.